You know, I look around the BDSM studio. Of course, that's Brian's Dungeon of Sex and Magic, before anybody gets confused about anything. Not saying that, well, anyway, won't talk about that here. But, such inspiration. It's not until I'm away from her for a little while that I realize kind of the magic in here. Just looking to my right, and there's, boy, this gorgeous. In fact, I shared a picture of it on Instagram. The Bajoran Solar Sailor from, in fact, when we were doing the last Star Trek update from March. By the way, welcome to your Wednesday Q&A for Sovereign Tech, and woo, the Golden Stallion's here for you, baby. The best in the world, the podcast champion. Let's tap the belt. Yeah. But anyway, when we were doing the March Star Trek update, I think Ellen and Stephanie and I, we were going out to lunch, or we were out to lunch. I'll say we were out to lunch. We were going out to lunch, and we were talking about the Deep Space Nine episodes that our top 3, and one of the ones that Ellen brought up, she brought up the episode with the Bajoran solar sailor, their solar sail ship, and I was just like, oh yeah, right, because like I knew what my top 3 were way ahead of time, and I knew my honorable mentions were going to be and everything, and I just I can't believe I forgot about that. And so I said, God damn it, like I'm never going to allow myself to forget that again. And so I actually ordered from Eagle Moss, which I've ordered a few ships now. I'm not getting addicted. I'm not going to like get every one, because they do like a monthly subscription service with Eagle Moss where they just do these gorgeous, mostly die casts, but certainly plenty of plastic, especially with this Bajoran solar ship, sailor. They release these every month. And anyway, they had last week, and I'm sure it's probably still going, I had like a coupon because I've bought from them before, and they had this Deep Space Nine 25th anniversary package, which came with a little, they're not little, they're a few inches apiece. It came with a Deep Space Nine, a little model of Deep Space Nine, or a die cast of Deep Space Nine, and that is largely die cast, except for I think the support pylons might be plastic. But and then they had a Galler class Cardassian vessel, and it had the Bajoran Solar Sailor. Now I wish instead of the Cardassian vessel I would have been better off, like I would have rather had the Runabout, but whatever, that's fine, because the Runabout's probably in my top 5 Star Trek ships just of all time. I love that. I'll be honest with you, it's not going to be true in Star Trek, or I'll be frank with you, it's not going to be true in Star Trek Forbidden Frontiers, but in most of the fantasies and erotica that I have in my own head or that I've written in the past for Star Trek, a lot of it's taken place on a runabout because it's perfect. It explains why you only need to write a few characters, and you don't need a whole ship and everything, and it's modular, so you can have all kinds of wild shit go on there, and they're designed for science, which allows for certain experiments perhaps to go wrong. It all gets very sexy very quickly. Excuse me while I have a little tea. But anyway, I got this 25th anniversary set, and it's gorgeous. It's really beautiful. The station itself, like Stephanie was, she was very excited when she saw it. She just thought it was so cool. Nothing like having people in your life that, Star Trek can turn them on. Woo! Anyway, let's just put it that way. But there it is, and it's so beautiful, and I just look at it, and it just gives me so many ideas, and I'm just like, just makes you want to be in the studio. It's important to do that. It's important for where you do your work that it's an inviting place, and it's a little. There's not that much in here, and the BDSM studio isn't huge, but it's inspirational, and just ideas and memories and all these things just come rushing to me every time I step in, and I absolutely love it. Of course, I love doing recording, when we have, because this is only designed for one, maybe I could fit in 2 people, but the way the cameras and everything are set up in here, it's really only designed for one. But whenever Ellen's on or something, or when Stephanie and I are doing it, or we're doing Sex and Science Hour, we'll go upstairs. We go to Stephanie's studio and do it all there, because there's like just tons of microphones, and she has all the big equipment and everything. It's really impressive. So anyway, real quick, if you're wondering about Sex and Science Hour, again, I'll say I don't have control over that show. When it can come out, it comes out, and that's largely the boss, that being Stephanie, the lovely and hyper intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy. Whenever she decides for it to be so, it comes out. So don't worry. Sex and Science Hour hasn't gone anywhere, just in case you were wondering. But anyway, I want to take a second here inside of our, well, I guess we're hitting the 5-minute mark already, but whatever. I want to take a second to just say, because I think it's been a little while since I've thanked the patrons, and I know I've got some new ones. So I just want to say thank you to the patrons. You really make all of this very possible. You make everything that goes round and round with the show happen. I am so honored that there are people who think that what I have to say, what I do, how I entertain, whatever else, is so valuable that you're willing to put down money on it. And it doesn't matter the amount. I'm ridiculously honored that is so. And you are just wonderful, wonderful people. And I thank you so much for it. I also, of course, could not thank the sponsors of the show that believe in the show as well. And I want to take a second also before we get into this week's questions, and we've got quite a few, and they're good ones. They're real doozies. We're going to run the gamut here. Tech, geeky shit, all kinds of stuff. It's going to be great. But I want to take a moment. I know there's a lot of people out there, especially so I obviously run in libertarian anarchist circles, myself a lot heavier on the anarchism. I don't exactly think of myself as part of the liberty movement. And honestly, I have all the evidence in the world that there's great people out there that are really respectful to me and that, want me to be a part of anything going on that's liberty and stuff. And I really appreciate that. But the larger libertarian audience, that would find my show appealing. I hear from them, they think I'm insane. They think I'm nuts. And even a lot of anarchists, who they give me they give me the rundown. And I've kept teasing that I was going to do a hate mail episode at some point where I read some of the hate mail. And I've really wanted it to be kind of the best stuff, because a lot of them are just similar arguments where somebody's just fucking offended and whatever, which I find hilarious, because also I get a lot of shit because people think I'm anti-free speech or something, which I'm not. I am one of the biggest, I don't mean to toot my own horn or anything. Okay. Maybe I'll fart, but I'm one of the biggest users, shall we say, of free speech that I know. No one's willing to say the shit that I say. At least that's the way it feels, and that's part of the reason that I started Sovereign Tech 6 years ago, was because no one's saying what I want to say. My opinions are not being represented, and my lifestyle and everything else, all the unconventional matters that I care about aren't being discussed or defended or whatever. And so, I took it upon myself and I started a little show. Fortunately, or, I guess by happenstance, the show ended up not being so little. I say all this because, I get annoyed because, in these circles, liberty/anarchist circles, I hear a lot of people say, oh, I'm so fringe. Oh, I'm so this. Oh, I'm so that. And I just think it's fucking hilarious. Because no, you're not. You're just not. And the fact that, the same people that listen to you, get livid when they listen to me, I think kind of proves the point. And I just want to say who I want to thank while we're passing out thanks is I want to say thank you to anyone that's ever been a guest on this show, on Sovereign Tech Prime episodes, and anyone that's ever been, that's ever a guest host, or guest co-host, I should say. And I want to also give a very special thank you to my co-hosts, that have been running with the show for, well, we'll say about the past 3 months. We started that whole gig in 2018. And, I want to thank, of course, Stephanie, who is the center of my universe. I think she's the center of the universe, not just my universe. And I'm not the only one that'll admit to that, and will say that. I want to thank Ellen. And I want to thank Robin. They are the most lovely people that I think I've ever known, because they are willing to put their own personal reputations and everything else on the line by even being in the same room with me, quite frankly, based upon, some of the emails that I get. They have a lot of courage. They are beautiful people, and I mean that in every sense of the word. It is such an honor to me, and it is I feel very hopeful I say this all the time. I'm a short-term pessimist, but I'm a long-term optimist. I'm a long-term optimist because there are people willing to chat up the unconventionality. I mean, even Robin, I know he just does the Star Wars update with me right now, but, still, you're slapping your name down, or stage name, whatever, doesn't matter. You're slapping your name down with Sovereign Tech. And I think that takes a lot of fucking guts. And I am very picky. You've got to be, and don't anybody take this the wrong way if I don't let you on my show. But I'm just saying, you've got to be something pretty fucking special, to where I'm willing to put you on the mic. Even Paige in the past. It's awesome. It's amazing. So I'm so honored by that. And I'm so hopeful because there are people who are willing to stand up for unconventional ways of living, unconventional ideas, and really being the future. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. I am so happy, just with that. To say nothing of, being in the studio and just looking around. I am so happy that people are willing to do that with me. So, anyway, enough of that. Let's get into our questions, shall we? I've already bored you for the past 10 minutes. Okay, we'll open this up. Actually, this is coming from Jim Jesus, this question, who runs the Lulberts podcast, which I certainly have no problem recommending people listen to if you want to check out some other, pretty unconventional shit and damn funny at times as well. Anyway, this is, well, I'll just read it because there's really a lot to unpack here. There's not the best answers, but the attitude alone helps with this. So let's read it. I'm interested in not only getting more unplugged from the big bad internets, woo, and there's like there's a nice little emoji of a big bad wolf there, and want to delve into creating mesh networks, intranets, etc. Is there hardware or software that I could look into, or perhaps some information on how to build one? I want to do it, but considering a lot of the people here in town are pretty well scattered across the Las Vegas Valley, I'm guessing he's saying it's kind of tough. Is there any way to connect us without running wires or having to hop on the series of tubes? Of course, that being the internet. Shemefrosh. Anyway. Also, don't care if you out me as the asker. Also, listen to Mitch Murder. Yep, love Mitch Murder. Right on. Big fan of that. We'll be talking a little music actually later on. So, actually, Mitch Murder, he did that track for Space Harrier that I thought was fantastic. But, okay. One of my favorite Sega games and a series that just doesn't get enough love from Sega that I think could really change things up, especially with AR and VR. Man, they are leaving money on the table by not messing with Space Harrier. So, okay, let's talk about this a bit. Here's the problem. This is like the dream, okay, where everybody can have their own little network, right? The way that this has worked, when I say that's the dream, that's what Sovereign Tech's been pushing for a long, long time. This needs to be a thing. And there have been projects over the past 6 years that have come and gone. Okay, and it's sad. I mean, some of them very exciting, like there was Byzantine Linux, which is a really cool idea, which is an operating system built from the ground up, of course on top of the Linux kernel, but built from the ground up to function most efficiently in a mesh networking environment. Where a mesh network, if you don't know, a mesh network is the idea of having, you have multiple devices that effectively act as nodes to create this, to create a independent network. That's the basic idea of a mesh network. Now, when you hear it in the press today, mesh networks usually mean your smart home, like how your Google Home will connect to your SmartThings hub, and that connects to the TV and all that. I mean, it's the same abstract idea, but usually when on Sovereign Tech we're talking about mesh networking, we're talking about creating independent, community-built internets or intranets, if it's within a very specific group, as to where, again, when the press, when the mass media, when the mainstream media, I should say, when the mainstream media is talking about mesh networking, they're just talking about IoT. They're talking about Internet of Things. They're talking about shit in your home, which is unfortunate that they've co-opted that term, because I think mesh networks are incredibly important today. Now, around the world, there are people that are building mesh networks. And one of the technologies that they're using, it's just firmware, but it's so much more than that, is LibreMesh. Okay, LibreMesh.org. In fact, it's funny. It's ironic that this question just came in, and you can find it on the Patreon page. It's where it was asked on the community tab, just by going to sovereigntech.com. It's ironic that, just the day before, I was actually looking. I wanted to release some Sovereign Rewinds throughout April, 2 or 3 of them anyway. And I was looking at the conversations that have been had, say, at PorcFest, which I'll be at this year, where we talked about mesh networking, where we've done updates on that. And I was listening back to those episodes, and I'll probably release them this month. I'll probably release, and I have Paige on with me, and I have Ryan Taylor, who he's a great guy. And we talk about this stuff. And the sad part is in the past 6 years, what's mainly happened in the development of all this stuff is that usually projects have just fallen away, or there hasn't been a whole lot of real forward momentum. It's kind of been stale, or if it's not stale, it's been trying to stabilize it. With LibreMesh particularly, they've been working hard on stabilizing the technology itself, and getting out the latest firmwares for it, for people to take advantage of. Now, if you go to their website, LibreMesh.org, and I put links in the show notes for that, they give you a lot of tools, and they give you examples of communities that are doing this sort of thing. We talked about it a couple months back, where there was the communities in Detroit that were literally laying down their own. They're either using what's called dark fiber, which is which is cable that, say, Verizon or whatever company, Comcast or whoever has, or Time Warner has laid down, but they're not using. And so they've co-opted some of this dark fiber, or they're laying down their own infrastructure, laying down their own cabling and everything, to where they can have a community intranet, but which also, because there's a hub where they can do this, they can also connect to the internet, the big bad internet, as I call it, and as Jim referenced it as. The big bad internet really is, that's everything that, that the World Wide Web sits on. That's the infrastructure that, and it's very centralized, right? Which is kind of the concern here. So, so that kind of thing's happening, and it's happened in other places. There's a town in Germany where they actually have blazing, it's a small town too, of 500 people. It's barely a town, where they, the local cable company in Germany said, well, it's not worth it to run it to you. We're not going to make any money off the investment. And all the people in the town just finally, they laid down their own money, and they have some of the fastest internet in Germany because they did it right. They put down the money to get it put in there, and there they go. I don't know that they set up any kind of intranet or something, but that was 4 years ago. We talked about it on Sovereign Tech. There are technologies out there that should be usable, that are maybe closer to being released to the consumer, kind of like P-Cell. That's in the letter P as in Paul. P-Cell is something that could allow for this. This is the hard part, is that if you're strewn out across, the Las Vegas Valley, if you're all over the place, it's tough to have something, especially if you're getting into the city and everything. It's tough to have technologies that can really bounce around. P-Cell is something that could actually bounce around and create that, but that's being tested in certain markets. It's not really something that's exactly out there, even though it is very exciting. But LibreMesh, there have been communities that have set up a LibreMesh network that allows for an intranet, again, not internet, but allows for genuine mesh networking. That's the point. It's in its name. To get hardware for that, the specific routers, there's a particular Linksys router that's really good for it. And again, all these routers can kind of bounce off of each other. So you can have some degree of range, where it's not limited to the range of one router. You can go to thinkpenguin.com. Those are pretty good guys that they can... they sell totally open source hardware and everything that would allow you to set a lot of this stuff up, at least in the basic way that you can. But yeah, it's the hard part. Depending if you're talking about more than a neighborhood, it's very difficult, I think, to be able to set up like a full-on mesh network without connecting to the big bad internets. I mean, the best thing, really, what I think maybe the more interesting direction to go with a lot of that would be either like Freenet or freenet.org, or even RetroShare, where those allow you to use the, Freenet maybe not. Well, I guess Freenet's kind of encrypted, but RetroShare more so. But they allow you to use the infrastructure that's there. But especially like with RetroShare, if you can get people to use it, I mean, and there's challenges with RetroShare, right? Because there's no mobile client really, and it'll drain a laptop battery like there's no tomorrow. I mean, like no game could even drain you could run Crysis and it wouldn't drain the laptop battery as harsh as hard as RetroShare does. So, those are kind of problems because we live in a very mobile world, right? But if you're running it from a desktop, well, fuck, run it all day long, but that's, there's doing that sort of thing right now is probably the easier option of the bunch, is actually just using software that piggybacks off of the big bad internets. And I think that might be the easiest way just to get people, like if they're technically minded, because we're not going to get, people want to set up what they call pirate boxes, right? Where, at a conference or something, there's a built-in intranet, and all those are really cool and totally possible. I mean, you really can do it. But, again, we want to get to where entire communities can have their literal own internet, or what chalks up to being an internet, where it's shared, everything's shared in between the community and everything. And I think if you can, this is not that I believe in incrementalism, and I don't think RetroShare is incremental. If you can get people to jump on RetroShare, okay, and create a RetroShare community, then after they get used to using that, you could, then at some point you could introduce an actual mesh network. And here's the beauty of it, is that RetroShare could just function over that mesh network. Right? Because then people could use whatever OS they want, as long as it's not mobile. They could use whatever OS they want because RetroShare works on everything, okay? And it's completely open source. And then you can use that as your chat, as your, you can almost kind of create web pages with RetroShare. You can create something like that. And you can, you can do file sharing, photo sharing. I mean, there's so much really, really cool shit that, most of what you want to do on the internet, you can do, on RetroShare. And I think that's, so get them used to that maybe on the big internet first. And then, that it's piggybacking on that. And then later you could set it up to where it runs on, kind of your intranet. Okay. When you have the hardware and all that set up. But yeah, the sad part is there isn't, there's been attempts like Open Garden and others where they're trying to bounce Bluetooth signals. That's really inconsistent. They wanted to go so far as to create a completely free mobile phone service, because what they would do, and that was with their product FireChat. With FireChat, you could, all you needed was Bluetooth, or I think it could also use Wi-Fi Direct. So all you need to do is buy the hardware. But the hardware, as in you needed to buy the phone that could run FireChat. Once you're running that, and this was used in the Hong Kong protests and everything in recent years, once you have that running, of course they can offer it as a free service because, there's software development cost. But there's no infrastructure, so this kind of Bluetooth skipping, that's not exactly happening yet. It is a way to solve it because that's what they're doing with IoT. Okay. But yeah, there really isn't. And what did they have? Like Open Garden came out with that Greenstone thing too, where it was just a little device that you could have in your pocket that was like a Bluetooth router effectively, and it allowed for bouncing, signals around. But that's not out there. That's not something that's out there yet, and that's entirely practical. But those sorts of things, the ideas are there, and really the technology's there. Just no one's actually like marketing it and selling it. And making it available for everybody to jump on board with. So I don't exactly, this is the sad part, is that this is the ultimate dream. This is what we need, but I don't exactly have the best answers as far as, how to make that work. Not on any kind of broader scale. Again, if we're talking like a neighborhood, a few houses, or like a condo complex or something, or a condo association, I mean, yeah, it's totally possible to do it that way right now, and it's not hard to set up. But going much broader scale, it becomes very difficult. I mean, another technology is Wi-Fi, like literal laser wireless internet. It exists. It's just there's no routers that use it right now, right? As to where if you had that, I mean, shit, then everything, just put shit on the rooftops and have it bounce. You could have that go forever, and just bouncing off of each other and everything. I mean, that would be so cool. But again, it's just taking the time for this stuff to actually come out and be released. But anyway, to answer the question, I would really, like I said, get people used to using the software that's going to be needed for a mesh network to actually work. And right now, I think the best option is RetroShare, which I've been a fan of for years. There's a SovereignTech RetroShare community, by the way, that you can find on Patreon. You just type in retroshare.sovereigntech.com is how you can get to that. Yeah, retroshare.sovereigntech.com, and you can find out, and there's a great explainer video that a SovereignTech listener made. I mean, it's really awesome. Get people on that software first, and then I think you can actually lay down the infrastructure, wireless or whatever, after the fact. So yeah, I hope that answers that. If you have deeper questions on it, feel free. I mentioned Freenet. Freenet is similar to RetroShare. I am just going to give you a bit of a warning, though. Freenet is fairly simple software. It's actually been well developed for some time, much more so even than Tor or I2P or some of these other, alternative internets that run on the internet, or these alternative webs, I guess I should say, right? Because everybody thinks of Tor as the dark web, when it's a perfectly wonderful thing. Freenet honestly has a very large pedophilia community, and there's a reason that I don't talk about it on SovereignTech, and that's part of the reason. And I think if you are running it, and if anyone notices that you're running the Freenet protocol, I worry that you could kind of become a target, and I think it's not, because there's other possibilities out there, and there's things being developed, some of them being blockchain projects, some of them not. I just steer clear. That's it. I just steer clear. So I'm just putting that, I know I'm being vague, and I'm just putting that out there. I have talked about it a couple times in the past, but that's one where I do worry about, sending the signal that it's being used. I mean, there's all that shit on Tor too, right? No doubt. But at the same time, Tor also, it's well known that, activists use it, and journalists use it, and it's such an, it's such an accepted and recognized to be important technology that, I think, like, if you ran a Tor node, I think the benefits outweigh any possible risks. With Freenet, I feel the exact opposite. So just putting that out there. Like, I've gotten emails from people that are very, very concerning over what, I'm all right. I'm just going to leave it at that. So anyway, there you go. Links are in the show notes for all of that, including, well, I'll just say it instead of put it in the show notes, but freenetproject.org. Okay. So let's go on to another question. And like I said, if you have deeper questions on that, if you wanted me to get more technical on something, feel free to ask. So, Here's an interesting one. So you said you hate Burning Man. Why? I thought it was just a bunch of hippies getting together every year or so. Okay. So Burning Man. I've mentioned Burning Man comes up every once in a while, and the reason is partly because a guy who's writing, I really appreciate, and I say his writing, I'm not saying him, Hakeem Bey, or Peter Lamborn Wilson, he is regarded as being kind of the inspiration, the impetus for the creation of Burning Man back in the 90s. Now, Hakeem Bey is an anarchist, and actually a tremendous anarchist writer. The audiobook for his seminal work, The Temporary Autonomous Zone, is actually something that I performed and did for for Sovereign Tech First University on Patreon. So you can listen to that and you can, see just how poetic, that he really is and amazing is as an author, and what solid ideas I think he has. Some of his ideas, especially the temporary autonomous zone and the permanent autonomous zone, which is this idea of having festivals where you can have like these little pockets around the world where you live in kind of an anarchist paradise for a little while, or a permanent autonomous zone where it becomes permanent. It's been regarded that idea was the inspiration for Burning Man, and that's why I mentioned Burning Man when it comes up. So Burning Man years ago, I think, was fine and dandy, was very cool, and there was some very, the idea, talk about unconventional and talk about, practicing very different ideas. That was definitely going on there. I mean, is really something, in my opinion, and I would have nothing against it. But in recent years, that has changed. In recent years, honestly, now it's the most conventional people on planet Earth, or the most authoritarian people on planet Earth. A lot of Silicon Valley people end up going to Burning Man. All these, just it's a different crowd. If it was just the hippies, I love hippies. Go for it. I mean, I really do. I say, yeah, have a great time, and rock it out there and do it. But it really has been invaded, and it's just become chic, where like it's almost now just sort of a rite of passage for you to, okay, yeah, I've been to Burning Man, and then you're okay, you're accepted, you're cool, we can let you into the Battery in San Francisco, and now it's fallen from what it was. And you can say that this happens to everything, right? Like some people argue that this happened to the Porcupine Freedom Festival. I mean, and yes, to some degree, or, this happened to San Diego Comic-Con, right? To SDCC, or just Comic-Con now. Sure. Like, I mean, in many ways, this does naturally happen as something gets more and more popular. You get people that just kind of invade it. Well, it's happened with Burning Man, But if we were talking about Burning Man, a few years ago, I'd have a much different, opinion of it. But now I don't know. I'm sure the elements that made it cool at one point are still there, but now there's too many asshats there. So that's my answer to that. But the concept itself of Burning Man, the abstract idea, I'm totally on board with. I mean, again, it's a TAZ. It's a temporary autonomous zone, so of course I'm on board with it. Okay, another question. Okay, so someone wants me to talk about the 4 Moneros. Well, sure. So actually there's 5. if we're gonna count those other 4 as actual Moneros, then there's 5. What happened, and this is very recent, as of effectively, what was it, April 6th? As of April 6th, when Monero went from version 11 to version 12. Now, Monero, of course, is a cryptocurrency. For those that don't know, it's considered one of the privacy coins, and it's one of the best known and most valuable cryptocurrencies out there. Kudos, I mean, like, bravo, I think when a cryptocurrency becomes a success, I no matter how I feel about it, I say, okay. Of course, Ethereum's not actually a success. I mean, it like maybe has a monetary success, but it's not actually a success in implementation. It's a complete failure. And everybody notices it now, which is just, it's so hilarious. I'm never going to get tired of that, because now, I mean, like, I was even talking to there's a project called Howdo, which is like this alternative social network. It's really interesting, that does use blockchain technology in a way. But like the devs were even saying, it's like, well, we've come to the realization, haven't we, that Ethereum's limitations are pretty extensive, and we can't just do everything on Ethereum. It's like, well, that's what I said, 4 years ago, but whatever. Nobody wants to listen to the Golden Stallion. I can predict the future, folks. But anyway, yes. I mean, Ethereum's value is totally held up by all the, ERC20 tokens. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. So, all right, well, okay, you might have doubts about it, but I don't think there's any doubt about it that's why Ethereum, hasn't just completely died. So Monero. So when they switched to version 12, and the reason they did this when they were updating from version 11 to version 12 was because they were trying to put a stop to what is Antminers, what is it, their X3s or whatever that were going to, or that were ASIC miners that could, be used for Monero. And so they wanted to be anti-ASIC miner. And so they did a hard fork for version 12. And after they do this, With the old blockchain, the version 11 blockchain, okay, pre-hard fork, kind of like how Ethereum had would have Ethereum Classic after, Vitalik decided that he was God and could rewrite history. There's like 4 Moneros now using this version 11 blockchain. And what is it? Let's see. Monero 0, Monero Original, and then there's Monero Classic, and then there's also another Monero Classic. So there's 2 Monero Classics, then there's Monero Original, and then there's Monero 0. Then there's, good old XMR. There's, there's version 12 Monero, which is, now the funny thing is that the marketing going around and all the press releases and everything going around about this stuff is that the other 4 Moneros are saying they're the real Monero. Like each one of them is saying that. Like Monero 0 is saying, oh no, we're the real Monero. Or Monero Original is saying, we're the original Monero. See, it's in the name. Or Monero Classic is saying, oh, we're the original Monero, etc. Now, obviously, the real Monero is the development team, that worked on version 12, right? And that being, just plain Jane Monero. Just like the real Bitcoin is Bitcoin, where, the Bitcoin developers are, right? This happening, yeah, there's going to be these excuses for this to happen every time. Now, the claimed reason that these forks are happening is because, there's people who think, no, ASICs are a good thing for Monero, whatever. And I'm not going to get into that argument, whether ASICs are good or bad, okay? Like that's really inconsequential as far as how this goes and what my opinion is on it. I think that all that's really happening here is there are a certain amount of people who are developing, these alt versions of Monero, and it's an easy cash grab, because I don't think that there's anything. It's not like, so when Ethereum Classic came out, I think there was some legitimacy for the idea of Ethereum Classic, because what Ethereum did, where they rewrote history after what happened to the, the DAO hack for however many 30 million, whatever the hell that was for. That was like, I thought that, not that it's necessarily unethical, but I thought that was just crazy. Like, what the hell are you doing rewriting history? Like, no, somebody followed the rules within Ethereum and they ended up swiping, so much money from people. Nobody broke any rules, so, why do you get to say, well, we're going to pretend that never happened? And, if your coders can pull a mulligan on the world economy at any given moment, that should be terrifying to anybody. That one person can have that kind of power, and really, Vitalik does. So Ethereum Classic coming out and saying, no, we're gonna go on, without that. Like, I think that there was kind of a legitimate concern there. Honestly, with Bitcoin Cash, I feel like I think they have some legitimate concerns. I think in some ways they're wrong, just like I think in other ways Bitcoin is wrong. But there's a little more legitimacy there. And those things, when it's something that exists for a legitimate reason, the market responds. That's why Ethereum Classic is still a thing. That's why Bitcoin Cash is getting, a lot of adoption. These 4 Moneros, like this kind of thing is going to become very, very common, because there are, like, what was there, Bitcoin Gold? There was other ones, that were out there. They were trying to be other Bitcoin, right? Other Bitcoins, Bitcoin I, BitKai. I don't know what we would call that. But really, they're just going for brand name attachment. This is an attempt to make some easy money by saying, oh, we're the real Monero. Then people jump on board with that, and then somebody gets a really great payday, and everybody else gets screwed, and these other versions of Monero will probably just fall out of development because they were never meant to be a long-term solution anyway. Maybe one of the 4 is actually thinking they're doing something right, like they think that, well, no, this Monero, crypto node and all that is a great technology, and we've got Kryptonite, which that's CRY. Anyway, we got that, and that will, but we want the ASIC ecosystem to exist within it. Maybe one of them actually feels that way. Maybe. And if so, then we'll see, what ends up coming of that. Okay. But Monero is kind of unique in that there is a real attitude around Monero, and the attitude also isn't anonymity. It's not the same attitude that, say, comes with people who are really passionate about Zcash or Sovereign Tech sponsor Zencash. With Monero, and I'm not insulting anybody that's using it, there's this real, like, almost 4chan attitude that goes along with Monero. And that kind of community, or, grassroots community around your crypto, I mean, you can't buy that. Like that's amazing, to have that sort of thing. And so there's an attitude that you have to follow with Monero, and that I think, the Monero development team really kind of fosters and garners, and there's maybe a little bit of hero worship that goes on in a way with that. And so I don't think these other four mean shit. If that's the bottom line of what you're asking, what do I think about these four, other four Moneros? They're meaningless. Like, who cares? So, I mean, I'm not even the biggest fan of Monero. I don't have a problem with it, but I'm also not the biggest fan, So, I'm way more on board with, Team ZK Snarks over there. I don't think these are really going to go anywhere. It's a quick cash grab, like a lot of people did with Bitcoin Gold. Even though some people say, no, Bitcoin Gold's still legit, blah, blah, blah. Okay. That's fine. If you think that way, that's fine. Whatever. You root for what you want to root for. Okay. I'm not telling you what to do. The only cryptocurrency out there, other than the very obvious scams that everybody knows and that journalistic institutions report on, are absolute scams. The only cryptocurrency that I have that I will be absolutely brutal and have no respect for whatsoever is Ethereum. I have no patience for it, and I have no patience for people who think it's a good idea. It just doesn't make any fucking sense. It just doesn't. And go talk to people outside of the blockchain community. Talk to actual computer scientists, cryptographers, and others, and they'll tell you that it's just, they'll look at it and they'll go, what? And it's not because they never thought of it. They could be very well versed in blockchain, for years. And they'll look at Ethereum and go, no, this is but whatever. Most people that are into blockchain, sadly, a lot of them stick within, they stick to only listening to other people that are in the blockchain space, when computing is, a very broad field. So, I mean, my prediction, and take it with a grain of salt, my prediction is that these four Moneros just aren't going to mean anything. They're just trying to, attach themselves to the name Monero to get like a quick cash in, because it says, oh, it's Monero. So, oh yeah, no, this is proven. This has, this can actually work. And it's just, I mean, to me, I kind of feel like they're scam coins, but because they think they have the name Monero, just like others thought they had the name Bitcoin, that somehow that makes them not a scam coin, or it gets them past the potential of being called a scam coin. That's just my opinion on it. I don't know. It doesn't, it just doesn't excite me, and the original Monero is still out there, like the, not Monero original, but like as in the real, version 12 Monero. Great. Then, if I was going to put my money down, where would I put it? Well, I'd put it down with version 12 Monero. There you go. Doesn't mean these other things can't exist. Go ahead, have them all exist. But if you're asking me what do I think about them, they don't do anything for me. So there we go. Okay, let's get on to another question. Here's actually a fun one. Actually, we'll get into a few fun ones here. This is actually from Robin, who co-hosts that I mentioned earlier. What do you think of the Bat Metal cartoons by REBES on YouTube? I keep telling people about them, but it just falls on deaf ears. I can't, well, considering that the music's done by Death Clock, it'll give them deaf ears if they listen to it. No, I'm kidding. I can't be the only one who loves this shit. It's got sex, metal, humor, and the fucking Batman. Seriously, why is it so hard to find people with good taste these days? LOL. Yeah. All right. So I had not heard of these. And they've been around. There's only 3 of them. Like it's a trilogy. In fact, they give it the names of the Batman movies. Like there's Bat Metal, which is the first one. Then there's Bat Metal Returns, kind of like Batman Returns, right? And then there's, just last week, there was Bat Metal Forever that came out. And what these are, very much in the vein of Metalocalypse, okay? Where, in fact, they're taking, Death Clock, the band from Metalocalypse, they're taking Death Clock songs, and they're putting like, Batman performing them with the rest of the Bat family, like Nightwing's there, Red Robin's there, the Red Hood is there, right? Jason Todd, and all that. And they're performing it on stage, and then there's some kind of story going on around it. And yeah, there's like sex. There's points where, Batman's in bed with just about every DC comic, female DC comic character and everything. And it's really hot. And the songs, of course, is Death Clock, so it's great. I mean, these are really, really cool. I had not seen them before, though. But like I said, they've been like, I think the first one came out 4 years ago. The second one came out 2 years ago. And then the latest one just came out this week. So, and yeah, I love this shit. I mean, it's hilarious. And yeah, it's got Batman, and there's some like kind of cool Batman action going on in that, especially since, you know, on a serious note, like we get so little real Nightwing animation, and Nightwing is awesome in these. Like, I mean, it actually kind of works. So even if you can't appreciate the humor and just the overall badassery of the music itself, there's some cool things to see within this. And of course they're gory and everything. Like I said, it's in the vein of Metalocalypse. When I watched the first two, Bat Metal, and again, they're on YouTube. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can check them out. And each one gets successively longer. The first one's 2 minutes, the next one's 4 minutes, the one after that is 6 minutes. And yeah, I don't know why more of this shit doesn't get made. It's so cool. Like, I mean, you could do it with almost any franchise, and it's just a lot of fun. But anyway, sorry, I'm just thinking about them, and they're so hilarious. They're so cool. Yeah, check these out. Where was I going to go with that? Right. So the first two, the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, okay, so on stage he's got, you know, he has Red Robin, he's got Jason Todd, he has Nightwing, he has himself, he has, you know, Tim Drake, you know, he has his original, or not original Robin, but you know, he has just Robin. Why can't we, like, where's Batgirl, you know, or where's Catwoman? Finally, in Bat Metal Forever, which it's kind of cool that's the name and just fortuitousness for me anyway, that ended on that, because actually probably my favorite Batman movie of the original Batman series, a Batman series of films, not the 66 Batman, and not Christopher Nolan's Batman. I really love Batman Forever. I could watch that over and over again. I mean, yeah, the first one's the greatest. You know, I get it that objectively that's so, but I do love Batman Forever. So this was cool. So Bat Metal Forever, finally we get Batgirl in it, and man, does she sexy shit up, like big time. And it's pretty hot for what it is. I love it. You know, there's a point where she's pretty much stripping. I mean, and everything. Hell yes. So I am a big fan of these, and at least this guy that you told, it did not fall on deaf ears. So like I said, it might be deaf after listening to it. But I thought they were so funny. They were so cool. And yeah, you got to see them to understand. But I thought that they were absolutely brilliant. Yeah, it's sexy. It's very sexy. We'll just put it that way. And I'm glad that Batgirl was finally in it. Maybe in another 2 years we'll get another one. I think they're already like wanting you to support them on Patreon, and they'll make more Bat Metal. Let's bring on Catwoman. You know, let's bring in everybody. Harley Quinn's already kind of been in them, but like, let's have them on stage, you know, and see how that all works out. But yeah, that's a lot of fun. I mean, I'm a huge Batman fan. Particularly, I do love the characters of Batgirl, and I love the character of Nightwing. You know, just been a fan my whole life of that shit. And so anyway, it's kind of fun to see this sort of thing, you know, and seeing Batman like singing death metal is just that's pretty choice. So all right, let's stick on the vein of music here. We got some more questions. We'll get into our album of the week for this week, which a lot of people have been very impressed with a few people have been very impressed with my recent choices for album of the week. I guarantee you I will disappoint you this week. So let's pull this one up. Hey, Stallion, I know in a recent Relationship Rhombus show you said there's very little music that's actually great to have sex to. While I don't entirely agree, okay, hold on. Let me stop there. I mean, there's lots of great music to have sex to. I'm just saying that most of the popular genres that you think of, when you actually get down to fucking, when you do, like, it doesn't exactly work. But no, there's tons of music out there that's great to fuck to. You know, either, you know, slower sex or faster sex or whatever, you know, whatever the speed being. I mean, it all kind of varies what you want to be doing yourself. You know, I'm not saying there isn't great music out there, but just by and large, like most of the songs that you're going to hear on the radio or whatever else, yeah, I don't think you can really fuck to that shit. So that's my point there. Okay, so let me read on. And as far as Relationship Rhombus show, your April Relationship Rhombus show will actually be getting recorded very soon. By the time this comes out, the post, I make a Patreon post every month for you to post your questions for the Relationship Rhombus Show, which the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy, the boss, and I do. You can put your questions there, and I can get to them. Or you can just message me or email me and just say, this is for the Relationship Rhombus Show, and we'll cover it. But that'll be getting recorded probably in the next week or so. We'll see what happens there. Okay, so anyway, yeah. So I know in a recent Relationship Rhombus Show, you said there's very little music that's actually great to have sex to. While I don't entirely agree, I do think there are albums that, while you can't have sex to them, they are quote-unquote sexy and can certainly be a turn-on or set the mood. Do you agree, and do you have an album in particular that stands out? Okay. Yeah, well, I already said that. I'm not saying there isn't music that you can fuck to, but yeah, I kind of get this. I kind of get your point that there, because yes, most of the music I listen to personally, or the main music that I like to listen to outside of, full admission, outside of movie soundtracks and TV soundtracks. And I mean instrumental scores, not, when you say soundtracks, people, I think they still have a very weird idea of what that means. Like they think it's music inspired by the movie, where not a single fucking song is in the film, but they sold you the album for it. But of course, nobody who even sells albums anymore, so maybe that's all faded away because of Spotify. And if so, well, then Spotify finally did one good thing. But regardless, aside from me listening to instrumental scores, how about that? The main thing I want to listen to is music about sex. that's just it. Or if I'm not listening, to Joe Satriani or Yngwie Malmsteen, or something like that, or Joe Stump. I mean, go down the list of those guys, Vinnie Moore, whoever. Yeah, I mean, it's music about sex, Motley Crue, right? I mean, go down the list of them. Yeah, and their music definitely can set the mood and is definitely a turn on, and it gets you thinking about sex. So sure, by definition, that's a turn on. But then there's music. So, I mean, I can see that, but then there's music that is kind of romantic, maybe music that has a certain sultry feel to it, that has a very sexy feel to it, maybe some funk, right? Or even some some pop music or whatever, where it's definitely meant to be sexy, even if you don't exactly have sex. You can't exactly have sex to it. Okay, I mean, you can have sex to anything. Anything can be going on in the background. You can have sex. It's not like music stops you from it, but where it somehow enhances it. But I could think of a couple albums. I mean, I can easily think of one, but I'll give you two. Okay, and these are fairly recent, so I'm not going to force you to listen to, I don't know, Marvin Gaye or Al Green or whatever. Not that I have any problem at all with listening to either of those guys, but I'm not going to pull any Luther Vandross on you here. So, all right, the first one is kind of one of them is going to make people laugh. The other one, I think, is an album, and I've mentioned this album in the past on Sovereign Tech. It was probably years ago. But this album, I think, is originally from 2005. And or maybe it was like 07, somewhere around there. But this is a fucking dynamite album. This album is so hot. In fact, there is music on there that I think you can fuck to. There's a song, Young Money, that I could totally, I have. Excuse me. So the album is by a guy named Ace Young. And the title of the album it's a self-titled. The title of the album is Ace Young. This album, so Ace Young, to give you a little history, he was in maybe the first 5 or 6 seasons of American Idol. Don't laugh at this. He was in the first 5 or 6 seasons of American Idol. He did not win. Okay. Otherwise, maybe you'd remember his name. He placed 5th or 6th or something. I mean, he kind of in the same area where, say, Daughtry, where Chris Daughtry won, right? And, of course, Daughtry would end up becoming more successful than almost any other American Idol, even though he didn't win the contest. This is at a time I was married. The whole family watched American Idol. Otherwise, I would never watch American Idol, right? Even though I'm glad to have learned about, Bo Bice and some of these other people, because they came out with some very interesting music. Now, the way I heard about Ace Young... Okay, but anyway, this guy didn't win, but he ended up, because at the time American Idol was so hot that if you were in top 5, you were pretty much guaranteed a record deal, and he got one. And how I heard about him was I was watching TNA Wrestling, and he was going to officiate a wedding with his song Addicted for SoCal Val and what's his name? Jay Lethal, tremendous wrestler. And SoCal Val. Woo. So anyway, so he was going to do that. And the song Addicted was from the album Ace Young. And I was like, oh, you know, I kind of like that. It's got a sexy hook to it. That's pretty good. And so I got the album and the whole thing, I was just like, oh my God, this is so hot. Like, this is really hot. And it's track for track. Now it's track for track, but it's half and half. And what I mean by that, half of it's hot, half of it's really sexy. The other half are kind of like sadder songs, you know, about like a lost love or something like that. But then the other half are the exact opposite. And they're just super, super sexy. And yeah, like though, especially that, I mean, the sad songs are totally listenable and very well done for what they are. Okay. And I don't think Ace Young actually wrote any of these songs, by the way. I think he just performed it. But fucking A, whoever they got to write all this stuff, I mean, they pulled out all the stops. It's a nice funk pop fusion. You know, and I dig funk. I can get with that, Aloe Black and all that, you know, soul and everything. But yeah, Ace Young, you've got to hear this album to believe it. There's so Addicted's a great song. Fast Life, Young Money, Dirty Mind, The Gift. Man, I mean, I'm just rattling those songs off. I even played it. I played it for Stephanie, you know, a little while back, and she just kept saying, keep playing it, because it's just so sexy, you know, and funky. Frankly, I mean, like it's tremendous. So, you know, if you want to get in the mood and set some stuff, you know, where you know, maybe a gal can get dancing, you could dance with her if you want. In fact, so in the gym, I actually for Lupercalia, it's what we call Valentine's Day around here. For Lupercalia, I bought Stephanie a stripper pole, and as I was playing Ace Young, and you know, she went right over to it. And maybe some others did too. Oh, well, anyway, it was awesome. So Ace Young, you got to hear that album and do what you have to do. You got to buy it. Get your hands on that. It is right from the first song. It gets in, like, I mean, he kind of intersperses the sad songs with the sexy, but listen to the entire album. Just trust me on that. There's also a hidden track that's like an acoustic version of another song on the album, but listen to the entire album. You've got to hear every song to get it. And it is amazing. What an album. So, yeah, that would definitely be one that I would say is sexy and can get you in the mood. Now, the other album that I'm going to lay on you, as far as one that's sexy, now you can laugh, because people seem to find it funny when, I don't know, I talk about musicians that have a billion more, you know, tons of more talent than they'll ever have in their life, and more than I'll ever have. Richard Marx. Yep. Richard Marx's Beautiful Goodbye. This was an album that came out in 2014. It had to have been on one of my top 8 lists, because this album just floored me. You know, it's what you expect from Richard Marx. Even though there's no real guitars in this, because Richard Marx is actually a hell of a guitarist and would use some very cheesy riffs back in the 80s and early 90s, when, you know, like his main 4 albums were the best-selling things on planet Earth for good reason. But his 2014 album, Beautiful Goodbye, is, some of it's sad, you know, and some of it gets, well, I guess there's a couple songs that I can think of where he brings in a little guitar. Forgot to Remember to Forget. But anyway, that song's not the best one on there. But another one where it's pretty much track for track, and there is just some of the hottest, sexiest. I mean, this is a romantic album, you know, all the way. It opens up with Whatever We Started, goes into Suddenly, then Inside, then there's the title track, Beautiful Goodbye. At the end of the album are like 2 of the best songs, Getaway and Eyes on Me. Eyes on Me will rip your heart out. Oh, man. But it's like sexy and sad at the same time. It's amazing. I mean, only Richard Marx can do that, because he's such a unique musical genius. You know, guys like him and Prince, and I mean, really, he's in that class. You know, where they're literal musical geniuses, you know, but like, and they can play so many instruments and do everything else, you know. Man, yeah, this album will kill you. And I gotta imagine So he recently, in that time frame, like around 2014, I think he got married to Daisy Fuentes, which I don't know how many of you remember Daisy Fuentes. I know I can't forget her. She must have just been his muse, because I've listened to his albums, for a really long time. And in fact, a lot of his more middle-aught albums, like around 05 and all that, those were really, really sad. And he seemed like a really depressed dude. And then he must have, I don't know, I guess he just started falling in love with Daisy Fuentes, and then suddenly, boom, I mean, like his creative juices were just, skyrocketing and just, going through the roof, and what other juices were going all over the place, I don't know. But hot damn. If she inspired that, may the world forever praise Daisy Fuentes for inspiring the album Beautiful Goodbye by Richard Marx. Right from the first track all the way to the last track, it is just the sexiest shit you're ever going to hear. So yeah, there are sexy albums out there that you can listen to and will just get in the mood and you can kind of dance to and everything. Maybe not exactly fuck to, but you could definitely dance to, and it'll just get you feeling, the not just the spectrum of the human condition, but the spectrum of human love more particularly, which is an aspect of the human condition, of course. So yeah, I would recommend both of those. I'll leave the names of those in the show notes. But okay, let's get into our album of the week, which has become a mainstay again in the Q&A. And this just came out like a few days ago, and we're recording in April of 2018. This is from a band called Kamelot, which I've been a fan of for a long time. And this band's gone through 2 or 3 iterations. But Kamelot, and the album's called The Shadow Theory. This is, I don't know, their 7th or 8th album. I mean, they've, maybe it's like their 9th even. I mean, they've had so many that they've come out with. I'm going to call it, I think it's enjoyable. There was a time, like, let's be clear, if you know about Kamelot, nothing, and you know this as well as I do, nothing is ever going to match The Black Halo, their 2005 album, The Black Halo. I don't know what was going on with, I mean, because so their lead singer at the time, they've gone through 3 lead singers. Their second singer is easily their best that they've ever had, and he had to retire. But that being Khan, not because he was old. I think he had a medical condition of some kind, but Khan was amazing. I don't know if it's because Khan just brought the epicness to it or what, but fucking A, The Black Halo, right when it opens up with March Mephisto, I mean, that album just kicks your ass. I mean, and it even when it slows down and it gets into Abandoned, oh, that's one of the most tear-jerking songs. Like, I mean, you could just feel that, and I think everybody's had their moment, even though it's talking about God, but like, oh, hot damn, yeah. So, sorry, I keep saying that. Yeah, so anyway, this is not The Black Halo. Let's make that clear. It's nowhere near that good. It's not even as good as the album after The Black Halo, which was Ghost Opera, which also had Khan in it. It's not at that level, but it's probably the better one that they've had in recent years, because they've had like 3 albums or so. God, maybe this is like their 10th or 11th album then. I should look it up. But because they had Silverthorn, which was the last one with Khan, which that album was very weird. And then they've had a couple others since then with Divine, and I forget what the other one was. But this is probably the best one they've done since Ghost Opera. So I'm going to give it the recommendation for that. But part of the problem is that they're using like this synth orchestra still, and it just sounds so early aughts, late 90s, that they're still using a synth orchestra to, instead of like a full-on orchestra that could really give it a lot more punch that I think these songs deserve. I mean, I can't imagine that I know there's like very serious Kamelot fans out there. I mean, I'm one of them. I know, I've had gals in my life, who are huge like crazy Kamelot fans. Like that's all the shirts that they would wear, So you can, people are really into it, but they're not, I don't know that they ever really made it. What really happened with this, with a band like Kamelot. Well, anyway, my point in making that quick is that, yeah, maybe they just don't have the money to do that kind of production, but it's a shame, because I think these songs, if they had a little more of a richer sound to them, this album could be really great, but it's just not there, and you don't have the excuse or the intensity of Khan. You don't have the excuse of it being in the aughts to where, like, okay, you expected music to sound like that, or you don't have Khan to really give it its legitimacy and its punch that it falls a little too flat to keep it from being really great. But anyway, what I think was happening really was like in the aughts, and particularly in the aughts, you had like this group of bands. You had Nightwish, you had Epica, Within Temptation, and you had Kamelot. Even Dragon Force really could almost get wrapped into this, even though they always stand on their own. There was a bunch of these like power metal bands, and I know there's Rhapsody of Fire, and Iced Earth, Blind Guardian. I know all of them. Okay, but like there was this very unique group where they were all kind of performing on each other's albums, and you almost felt like there was this like federation, for lack of a better term, or confederation, like of like these metal bands that were like a movement. They were just delivering this tremendous, really epic gothic stuff that wasn't necessarily depressing at all times. But I don't know. Like each of the bands, like Epica, appearing on an album for Kamelot and whatever, like it all kind of made everything sound like way more legitimate and just gave it a cool factor that's always tough to pin down what allowed for that. But there was this real movement going on, and a lot of these bands I feel like have very much fallen away, and it's really kind of sad in the past few years. I mean, Within Temptation has still had great albums. Nightwish is still kind of doing their thing, but they've got to know. I mean, they've already released like their second greatest hits album. They've got to know they're in trouble. And which their second greatest hits album doesn't sound much different from their first. And so on. Or even like Tarja Turunen, when she went solo, like her albums have become almost a joke. So I don't know what happened there, but it's kind of sad because there was some really epic shit and some of the best music ever done, getting laid out from, I really want to say like between 2003 and maybe like 2013. But then it just kind of stopped. Like when Within Temptation, when they came out with The Unforgiven, that album was just, that's a masterpiece, right? Yeah, I don't know what the hell happened. I don't know what changed or how this all kind of fell apart. But Shadow Theory is a great attempt at bringing that sound kind of back, I think. But it's not like the greatest album. But if you're a fan, if you've never listened to Kamelot, you can check this out. But if you've never listened to Kamelot, you go right to Black Halo for me. And then you can listen to Ghost Opera, The Second Coming, which was like a re-release of that because that album was so huge. And then you can appreciate a little more. I think you can understand where the album The Shadow Theory is coming from. I remember I introduced a great friend back when I was working at the last tech company I was working at. I introduced him to Kamelot, and he's, he just like, he said his face melted. He was like, oh man, he says, this is the kind of music that should have always been in my life. And I'm like, yeah, I know, so anyway, check out The Shadow Theory if you're into that kind of like gothic power metal, because it's there. It hits. Best songs on there. Stories Unheard, I think is a really great song. And that's one of the later songs on there. Raven Light is good. So there's a couple of really solid tracks, but it's not at the level of some of, Kamelot's past stuff. So anyway, that's it for our album of the week. And that's it for our Wednesday Q&A. If you didn't get the notification, the live Q&A hangout is going to be next Tuesday after this gets released. That'll be the 17th. And I've gotten some feedback from people on when the best time it is to do the live Q&As. We might shift it back to Sunday. If not, I won't do Tuesdays or Thursdays. I can guarantee it won't be those days anymore. At least I'll try to make them not those days. My schedule's has gotten hectic in April because there's certain things going on. I like doing them on Sundays too at like 4 p.m. But yeah, this will be on Tuesday. Again, that's the 17th of April, and that'll be at 4 p.m. Eastern if you want to be a part of that. And, of course, about an hour before the show starts, I push out the links to the patrons, and it's a Patreon-only Q&A. But you get to be on and enjoy it, and you can either just ask questions in the YouTube chat, or you can even come onto the Hangout with video or just audio if you want, whatever. And we go for a good hour, and it's a great time. So anyway, that's coming up, and there's other content coming out for Patreon. Of course, you got your Star Trek update that will be coming out in the coming week, and all kinds of fun stuff that we'll be doing. And anyway, yeah, I love what I do. Anyway, I love all of you. I will see you on the other side. Woo!